The Violet Evergarden Movie, so much crying. It felt like I was watching Avengers Endgame. So what's up guys, Foxen here. Part of the journey is the end for Violet. Kyoto Animation really sent her off with a bang. So if you like Violet 2, smash that like. It'll really help reach more Violet fans. Keep in mind this is a non-spoiler anime review. Spoiler section at the end. The Violet Evergarden anime is really one of those anime series that has grown on me as the years have passed by. I haven't yet made a top 10 anime list for myself yet, but this anime would definitely be a contender. Getting into the actual movie, when does this take place? It is clear that a good chunk of time has passed by since the end of Violet Evergarden Season 1, so I'm gonna estimate around a year to a year and a half since the end of Violet Evergarden Season 1. For the actual story, one thing that does continue from Season 1 is Violet's quest to discover the meaning of the word love. Aishiteru. You do continue to see Violet making progress overall. And even past that, at one point you're like, wait, did Violet just make a joke? Holy crap, we gotta document that with a letter. You will be happy to hear that Violet does complete her arc that began on the first episode. I do wish they went further in one specific part that I'll touch on later. For the Major's brother. From the trailers and synopsis, you know this guy makes a return. This a-hole is the whole reason Violet is in her current situation. Let me just say that while I didn't really like the guy by the end, he got a nice send-off. And then for the other revolving Violet cast, you do get some updates and some quick progressions for some. This is mainly supposed to be Violet's story, but it was satisfying to see where everyone ended up. One of the things you will be wondering is whether you need to rewatch the first Violet anime. To be honest, that's really always my suggestion, especially if it's been more than a few months since you've seen the anime. But if you don't have a lot of time, I would highly suggest rewatching the first 2 episodes, the infamous episode 10, and then the final 2 episodes. The first movie and OVA special are not required viewing. This movie actually does a lot of the work for you, since it flashes back pretty often to important scenes from the earlier episodes, especially from the time when Violet was a bloody, dangerous loli. This Violet movie is actually pretty similar in structure to the first movie. You got 2 pretty distinct parts that eventually join in. I do feel like this actually combines more naturally compared to the first movie. The 2 distinct parts need each other to blossom. Next up, the animation. Kyoto Animation brought their endgame, a few things that stood out. The first is really just a close-up character faces, especially with blonde Violet and her blue gems. This anime is definitely one of the most detailed with close-up shots. Think Attack on Titan Season 2, but then go past that. For the actual movie, I can't really say there was this scene that was a standout piece of the movie. Perhaps a certain fireworks scene, which reminded me of Disney. That said, one of the things that I really enjoyed was seeing certain flashbacks of young Violet, but now with new animation, to see things from her point of view. I was just waiting for her to say, Eren. In general, seeing this on the big screen felt like an orgasm for your eyes. To be fair, right now it is impossible to compare it one-to-one, but it felt like the background and the individual characters were more detailed or higher quality compared to the TV anime. As for the music, it seems like the soundtrack got completely redone for the movie. Although you should know the TV ending did play once in the movie. Overall it seemed to fit the scenes pretty well. It didn't feel like there was a certain piece that just jumped out as pleasure for your ears. And you might be wondering, were there any issues? Thankfully I could tell you I really didn't have any, but I did notice a few things that could bother some anime people. First off, the length. More is always better, or at least you would think. This Violet story might be one of the longest anime movies I've ever seen. It's a colossal 2 hours and 30 minutes. So definitely be sure to use the toilet and make sure you really do love Violet. Otherwise, some of the slower parts may drag, which thankfully not an issue for me. For the second possible issue, there's something the movie does with jumping around with time. This was actually something you saw in the TV anime already, but the movie just had to be extra. Right now I'm feeling a little neutral on it, but I can already tell some anime fans will either not like it, or will just feel it made the movie longer. I will expand in the spoiler section. And then not necessarily an issue, but I did notice 2 slight weird things. The first was teleporting Violet. Out of context, you do see Violet dropping something on the ground. Another person goes over to pick it up, they look up, and Violet just disappeared. Imagine her just gone on this plain field. For the second weirdish scene, unsurprisingly, Violet will be crying her ass out in this movie. But for one scene, it was like, oh my god, she really is crying for what feels like 5 minutes. I think for this particular scene, they went a little overboard. And talking about cry time, I really wasn't joking when I said this felt like Avengers Endgame. The whole theater was crying, you could hear it throughout the movie. My buddy that went with me actually said he teared up more for this Violet movie. And I'm not gonna give away the scene right now, but the theater was soaking within the first 10 minutes. You cannot not tear up at the intro scene. Throughout the movie, of course, there are other various spots that'll get you emotional, notably two big ones. One of them includes Violet ultimately facing her demons. If you loved Violet and her journey, this will likely get you. For the second, this will actually be related to Violet's letter request. And I know, you're gonna ask, which was worse, was it this or the emotional episode 10? I'm gonna get to that in the spoiler section, but do expect to ugly cry big time. The only reason you wouldn't share massive liquids in this movie would be either you not liking the Violet anime, to which I would ask, why are you here? Or two, you're just drained from the earlier emotional stuff. As for a global release for this, it is unknown. Netflix not only has the rights, but they did help to fund the Violet Evergarden anime, which means I'm really doubting this is gonna get a global theater release anytime soon. Not to mention what's going on globally. At the rare release, it should show up on Netflix sooner or later. So let's get into it. Should you watch it? And I know, that question should sound silly. This is really a must-watch for any fan of the Violet Evergarden anime. This does close the book on Violet's journey. For me, it's actually giving me more motivation to improve my Japanese reading level, so I could actually read the Violet Japanese books. Right now, this Violet movie is in my top 10 of 2020 easy, perhaps even top 5. On top of this, be warned. You know that empty feeling you sometimes get when an anime you love ends? Warning, you may strongly experience that sensation here. This Violet Evergarden movie is not shy about firmly closing the cover on Violet's tale. I think for that reason alone, I do want to see this again on the big screen a few more times. But hold up, did I say it's over? As an awesome theater gift, they were actually giving you 1 out of 3 short stories when you bought your ticket. These are new original stories written by the author. Benedict Blue's Violet, Oscar's Little Angel, and Violet Evergarden If. I'm actually more curious about this last one. And make no mistake, this being Violet Evergarden plus the Kyoto Animation Studio, especially after that horrendous tragedy, expect this movie to make dump trucks of money, especially from repeat viewings. The theater was packed. I had to get the worst seat possible in the first row just so I could see it on opening day. I really doubt there's going to be a Violet Evergarden anime season 2, but don't be surprised if there's more Violet OVAs or some other theater specials that do come out. Next up, spoiler section. But really, what can you spoil for this Violet Evergarden movie? You can know everything coming and you still will ugly cry a bunch. Feel free to ask any questions below, but make sure to finish the video since your question likely got covered. In case the marketing didn't already make it super obvious and clear, yes, the Major is alive. The fun part about that is that I actually spoiled myself after watching season 1, just researching the books that the anime was based on. Ultimately, this is how they felt it was best to close out Violet's story. I mentioned earlier there being 2 pieces to this movie. First off, you got Violet visiting a client to do her thing. This time it's a little sick boy dying away in a hospital. At the very least, Violet was kind enough to give the kid a sweet discount. She got hired to write 3 letters to his family in case he passed away, and you can see where this is going. Part 2, the Major. To be fair, you kinda have to let the story have this one. Turns out the company boss noticed an incoming letter and recognized the writing. Good chance that it belonged to you-know-who. Flipping over to the Major, he actually got introduced pretty early, way before the halfway point. I do like that they didn't really try to hide the fact of who he was. And you might be wondering, like I was, how the hell did he even survive that? The dude was not looking good, plus the building exploded. To be fair, the guy didn't exactly make it out in one piece. He survived, but with a missing eye and arm. They cleverly hide this in the poster. Since then, he has started a new life on a remote island as a teacher for little kids. The second half of the movie has the boss and Violet going out to find him. Unfortunately, Gilbert does not want to see Violet. Right here, I was getting really frustrated. I mean, Violet was right there. Yet the Major wouldn't come out. The dude thought it was best for Violet to live her life without him. He still felt bad about the whole situation. Despite him not seeing Violet as a tool, he still continued to use her as a weapon. He thought he could never make amends. Just to add to the frustration, Violet runs away and they never meet this moment. Thankfully, there just happens to be a storm so they can't take off the island. The bad news? The sick dying kid that Violet met took a turn for the worst. Violet had actually promised that she would record his final message, so she gave that priority. Unfortunately for her, even without the storm, that was still a 3-day trip. In the end, Violet had to compromise. One of the other dolls went in her place. Oh yeah, this whole scene was beyond cry time. Get your ugly cry face ready. This whole scene will break your heart as a kid is trying to get his final words out. Then you got a double whammy. You see this coming a mile away. Naturally, the kid passes away in the middle of all of this, surrounded by his parents and loved ones. If you weren't already a complete wreck, this is where they bring out Violet's letters and then start reading them one by one. Oh, this got me really bad. As a bonus, there is a possible third stab to your heart, which was the kid's little brother going last. As you could imagine, the little kid doesn't really know what's going on, but he's happy that his brother left some kind words for him, and then you just suddenly have the kid calling out for his brother. Of course, there's no reply. I'm already starting to tear up just recalling this stuff. Anyway, back to the island and Major. Violet decides to take off the next day from the island, but not without leaving the Major a letter. Between all of this, you have the Major meeting his brother, and then reading Violet's letter. It's with this that the dumbass realizes how stupid and selfish he's being. You got the guy running over to the shore and screaming out to Violet in the boat. Violet immediately jumps off and swims back to the shore. I'm guessing those arms are waterproof? So here you have it, the 5-minute cry time. You got the Major and Violet all wet, and Violet's just saying, watashi, just I, and was crying for what felt like 5 minutes. You could tell Violet was trying her hardest to say I love you to him, but she didn't get it out, which was so frustrating for me. At least they do embrace and then it cuts out. What really helped add to that empty feeling just hammering down this movie being a closure for Violet is that Violet is already long gone by the time that the movie starts. Recall back to the sad intro I mentioned, and also that extra level of time. The start of this actually flashes back to the latter episode, episode 10. The actual movie starts off with the granddaughter of the letter girl looking over her grandma's saved letters. So even the girl that received the letters is already long gone. This whole thing later in the future is not a huge part of the movie, but it does add an extra layer. The girl in present day eventually goes on to investigate Violet who wrote them. You get to see things like her stopping at the old post office, which is now a museum. She eventually makes her way over to the island, the place where Violet and the Major apparently spent their final days at. And yes, they do confirm Violet is long gone. You actually see her red ribbon tied to a tree on the island. Oh yes, let that sinking feeling settle in. The final shot of the movie after the credits is actually a close-up of Violet's hand holding the Major's hand. I definitely wouldn't mind if they showed us some OVA special with the two actually being together. To quote a different series, there wasn't even a kiss scene. So go ahead and watch this as soon as you can. If you did like this video, please be sure to hit that like, it helps out a ton. But anyway, let me know, how do you feel about Violet's conclusion? Or ask any question you have below, the quicker the better. Subscribe for more in-depth anime videos like this one. Watch my latest juicy fall anime video and I'll see you guys later.